So we are recording it. Yes, thank you, Jenna, for the introduction. I've been doing this role since May of last year, and one of the first things I identified in the security space is there are a lot of products, way too many products, but nearly all of those products will tell a client, you've got a problem. It actually won't remediate it. It might raise a ticket, and therefore an engineer will have to get involved and then obviously do resolution. What we want to be known for is that we will take those alerts and that we will, where possible, remediate that with Ansible. And so this is the second vendor that we've built or co-created use cases around. We'll share the one with Orca next month. But we want to go through two use cases. Bear with me, there's a few people wanting to join. So we've done it with Orca as well. I would say that, we believe Ansible is a really powerful tool. We went through this yesterday, and the demonstration that we're going to show of the playbooks, right, I wouldn't call sexy, but let me tell you, they really solve some major issues for customers. So what I'm going to do is talk to you very briefly about what is Tenable.ad, and then we'll just launch into the two playbooks and discuss what the next steps are, right? So I'm happy to take questions along the way. What is Tenable.ad? So it is one of the products in the Tenable portfolio. They have been in the market acquiring a number of businesses, and this is an example of that. This was previously a company named Alcid, which was a French company, and they bought that product about 2 years ago. So when you ask a customer, do you have Tenable? You need to go a little deeper and ask the question, do you have Tenable.ad? Because there are a lot of customers out there who use Nessus and Nessus Pro for vulnerability management. There's less so who are doing the Active Directory piece, right? These playbooks are directed specifically around the Active Directory piece. So the two playbooks that we're going to show you this morning, one is about sleeping accounts. And let me set this up for you, right? Active Directory is, in technical terms, a pain in the bum to actually continue to manage and make sure that its hygiene is up to spec. Many things like people leave companies, contractors come and go. These all are potential access points for threat actors to get into an organization and obviously look for crown jewels like data that they can exploit, right? And we've seen plenty of examples of exploitation over the last 6 months, right? So what we have built is a workflow that basically says if we identify a sleeping account, the first thing we'll do is make sure it's disabled, right? Then we'll extract it from its membership such that it can't actually do anything in that membership. And then further down the track, we will delete that user. Now, let me give you a quick example of this, right? We have a health customer who has 30,000 Active Directory accounts. They initially installed Tenable.ad on there, and within the first 4 hours, it was identified that there were 20,000 sleeping accounts. Now, how does that happen? Well, every doctor gets an AD account. And so they are creating a point of entry, 20,000 points of entry, should those credentials get sold onto the web or somebody hacks them, right? So I will pass to Ryan and he can step through the playbook.
Thanks, Wayne. Please share my screen. Yeah. So over here, I've got AAP in our lab environment running. We have this engine over here, which demo, I'm going to basically kick this off. And this emulates the fact, I'll have to zoom in, because clearly this is not. There's there. Couple tools. A bit left. So what it does is basically will start off an approval task. Technically, it will go into your ITSM tool and create a ticket and ask for, approval. I'm emulating that approval through a workflow task in AAP itself. Just check. I'm just waiting for it to start up a bit. And when you do the approval, it will then go into AD and start looking at users. I have set up a bunch of users. These users over here have been intentionally kept inactive for a long time, and they're going to start being disabled when I approve this. Sweet. Yep. So if I come into approvals, there's a task. I'll approve it. Active the jobs. Sync. Sorry. Once they get disabled, I've also set it up so that the next stage, the run date will be moved like as if it was 15 days advanced. When 15 days have lapsed, we then start moving these accounts into it. Into another OU. Just a second. Yeah, it's disabling the users now. The playbook is running now. So if I go into Active Directory, there we go, the first one, and so on and so forth. If you go back to the play, you'll also see it. It's iterating all the users that it's found.
I guess while that's going through, Ryan, I could probably jump in and explain why we do it in a structured way.
Yeah.
The first point of any stale user is to disable them. So when you disable a user, what we initially do is we block access. Within AD, you see a lot of legacy environments, especially for vendor onboarding and offboarding with third-party tooling, that it actually injects an expiry into a user. Now, an expiry is great for an on-premise environment, but what people don't know is that an expiry is no good for a hybrid environment. So as soon as you start to rely on expiry with single sign-on applications through to Azure AD and anything that is SSO'd in there, expiry is actually not replicated. So even though a user might not be able to log into their laptop, if they were to use a browser, they can still get into Outlook Online. They can still log into third-party products that are authenticated through SSO and don't link back to that on-premise authentication piece. So it is a known issue within the Microsoft space, but a disable stops that in its tracks straight away. As soon as you disable that user, it's replicated up through Azure or any other authentication platform, and that user is then blocked from signing in. When we go the next step and we extract current group membership, what we're looking at there is how to reinstate someone should they need to come back from either long-term leave, or if they're a vendor and again, coming back to work on a new project, they require their same access to be extracted, or if they were offboarded incorrectly. What that allows you to do is pull from your ITSM tool, re-inject the exact same group membership, and that user is back to the state they were. But that time in between, the attack vector is gone. The user can't log in. So if there was a period of 2 weeks where that user was potentially inactive, the attack vector and licensing associated with that user is backed out in the same manner as well. The last is the actual move and delete of the user. 2 reasons that you delete. One is an absolute sync association with Azure. So when you delete a user in AD, it actually starts the Azure purge process. That's everything from a personal OneDrive to a personal mailbox and anything in between. But the delete is about keeping your AD clean, keeping replication time down, and ensuring that you don't have these legacy items sitting around for years and years. There's no need to have 100,000 disabled users if you've got the ability to restore them from either AD Recycler or a granular tool, or you've got the ability to reinstate and create that user with the exact same group membership should they come back in.
Also the cost savings.
And the cost savings is a big one. So the reason we look at a stale user process is 1, from an attack vector, 2, it is really a maturity and offboarding process. And 3 is it aligns with audit and framework compliance. Everything from ISO 27001 through to CIS, through to the Essential 8, all have privilege and account management clearly documented, but it is to be centralized and recurring on repeated activities with auditing. What we've done here is build a platform that can be audited, that can be repeated easily in a structured manner and doesn't require intervention from an infrastructure team.
Right.
So this is now moving the users into a disabled OU group. It's just reached stage 2, basically. You can see the users are coming in.
And the last step would be obviously deletion, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, any questions in regards to that as we'll move on to the second playbook?
I had a quick question,
Sure.
and I think I know what the answer is right now. So if you have users that are, if Ansible sees that it meets a certain requirement, and these users, when you have, let me back up. Let's just say you have a user base of say 50,000 people. I think you mentioned 40,000 in your example for your client.
Yeah.
And you found that there's 20,000 sleeping accounts. And this is a huge security risk, and I 100% absolutely agree with you. And you run a playbook to take care of those accounts. So let's say a month passes, right? And let's say 500 more accounts now qualify as sleeping. Does the user have to manually check that? Or is this or can it be built into let's say the event-driven plugin with Ansible that's going to be GA in 2.4, it's in preview right now. It can constantly listen and say, okay, it meets these requirements, take this action or not take this action. Is that possible right now, or is that like a second iteration of this service?
So yeah, you go, Ryan.
The way the job's designed, it's more of a cron job thing. You're looking at the metadata and asking AD, give me the users that are not logged in these many times. The second query is you're asking, give me these many users that are in this OU part, and so many days have elapsed since they moved into this OU. Right? It's a more time-based query of the system as opposed to listening for a non-event where someone hasn't logged in. It's hard to automate an event-driven design in that space.
And this is where we use Tenable as a sense of truth and a variable engine as well. So within the Tenable.ad platform, it has the ability to observe centrally any Active Directory user and customize that stale user process. So in an example, you might say, my current stale user process is if anyone hasn't logged in for 45 days, I want to make this change. I want to disable that user. In 12 months' time, there might be new legislation that comes out that recommends that's 30 days. Rather than having to go and rebuild your playbook and modify there, you actually just update it within Tenable.ad, and it also allows you to build a whitelist within Tenable.ad. Now, that system doesn't have to be administered by technical staff. It could be administered by either a security team, a HR team, or an application team to build their own whitelists as well. You might have, a team of people that are long-term leavers that have been off for 6 months, 12 months, 9 months, whatever it might be, and they can sit in a whitelist that is centrally located, that's not dependent on a CSV file or a particular file location, structured within this system and auditable, and then we wash against that to ensure that we don't offboard those users.
So that part's a more manual process, right?
Well, that is the Tenable.ad side of it. So it's building that whitelist and building your exterior source of truth. So
Gotcha.
AD is your authentication and database for users. Tenable.ad is the side that comes in and allows you to do that reporting and interrogation of it.
Okay, makes sense. I was just curious. That was all.
All right, Vince, do you want to make additional comments to this?
No, I think that's, I sort of touched on that already, but really it is repeatable and structured. This doesn't have to be executed by technical teams. The big one here we find as well is that it can be license driven. As soon as you offboard a user, disable their access and remove them from their groups, you free up licenses, whether that be Microsoft 365, vendor-driven products that are based on a per-user model, anything like that, you start to revoke access and you start to reduce your numbers. So you can really look at it from a license and cost saving side as well.
All right, and I'd only make a comment that you'll see there the CIS, which is a security framework. Obviously, this addresses the control number 5. So people who use frameworks to measure their security posture, we can show them that we can address this in CIS, NIST, or Essential A. All right, we'll move on to the second playbook, and this is about privileged access. Right? So privileged access is potentially users who can do more than just the average user, right? And we need to understand who's trying to get privileged access in the environment, right? And any changes that occur over time. So we built a playbook to create a visual impact of what that would look like. Vince, do you want to make any other comments?
Yeah, I guess this goes back to the privileged access and the framework alignment as well. So what we're looking at here is the groups to monitor are really things that are identified within the Microsoft landscape. And this is Active Directory on-premise as well. So when we talk about these privileged groups, these are all built into AD straight out of the box. On day 0, they are the first thing that is there, those groups. But that's not to say these are the only groups you can monitor. If you have an AD group that you're using for central authentication into RHEL servers, into any environment, be it, maybe an AWS linked environment through SSO, an Azure-based environment, whatever it is, it can be added to this particular scenario to ensure that you can audit, firstly, who's in there and build your own whitelist, and then audit who's being added. So this is, I guess, back to Stephen's question, more event-driven in that you're not doing a point-in-time compliance check of these privileged groups. You have real-time visibility to see who's trying to jump in or escalating within your environment.
So to show that in play, I'm going to go back to AD. Over here is my domain admin groups. Right now, there's already one person. I'm going to go add another person, John Smith. I'm going to apply that. These are salespeople that shouldn't be in here. And
Always
there you
the
go.
sales guy.
Always the sales guys.
And it's already bumped up. And you can see it's reached 4 times today itself. This person John Smith has tried to. And down here, the alert is in normal state and it'll fire soon.
So a threat actor could get credentials that don't give them the privileges that they're trying to use in the environment. This will detect if they're trying to upgrade their privileges. Right? So that's really important.
Yeah. Because
Active Directory is somewhat the crown jewels of access in an organization. And if they can get the level of privilege that they need, they can do untold damage in an environment, right? Notwithstanding all the ransom that comes with it.
And you can see this one has just picked it up at 11:25. It's fired. It's in a firing state. Now, if I go back and remove them, right? So say I remove John Smith, say apply. This count hasn't gone down. The count is still sitting at 4, but the alert will disappear. Right? And the way the alert can be designed to run is run every 24 hours. So if it's an alert state and you're, now, Stephen, we are using event-driven Ansible, it will fire every 24 hours and, make sure that ticket, do whatever stuff you need to do with that ticket. So say it's been a week and no one's done anything, you can escalate that ticket then. So there's a lot of smarts we can put in through there when we're integrating with your ITSM tool.
So that's going to give teams visibility, right?
Yeah. So again, we use Tenable.ad as the whitelisting and reporting engine here, and then we use Ansible to do execution and alerting. So what we're looking at is potentially someone probing within the network, adding themselves to privileged groups, or just not following the correct process. If you have a structured process that you're doing with an ITSM tool to grant access to specific sensitive environments, that needs to be followed appropriately. And that might be that user is whitelisted and then elevated. So if you've got a PCI environment and you start to see users being added or a nested group being added, and a whole lot of access here expands, you've got the ability to raise a security incident, revoke that access using Ansible, and then work through granting the proper access through process.
All right. Any questions on playbook number 2?
No, I get it.
So Vince has spent a lot of hours inside an organization recently. He would have loved to have had this before then.
The only question I have on the last playbook is is it just logged in ServiceNow, or is Tenable sending it? Is it in Tenable, or is it just being sent to ServiceNow?
So Tenable will be the source of truth when an event occurs, but it doesn't keep an audit trail. What we do is we keep an audit trail of how many times it's occurred, and every time it's occurred, we will associate that with a ticket in an ITSM tool and track it against that.
Okay. It could be Jira. We will obviously work with clients. They're usually the top 2 that we get, that we can send off a ticket to an ITSM tool.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just thinking, is it typical with the, and I do not know Tenable that well, but does it integrate within, say, some sort of reporting tool, like, I don't know, Dynatrace or Splunk or something of that nature?
So under the covers.
So it does have the ability to fire out syslogs. It's more because it's looking at active replication. It's more looking at indicators of exposure over time rather than it having a reporting engine itself. Tenable do have plans for it, but it just doesn't exist right now.
That's fair. The reason why I'm asking these questions is because I'm looking towards the future.
Yeah,
with Ansible. So, this is really cool stuff. So, kudos to you guys. B, if I'm asking these questions, it's more of a how can we get an OEM to bridge that gap type situation to make that entire use case even better. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah,
So,
and like I guess to that exact scenario, like I've worked on a Royal Commission to be able to demonstrate through reporting from day zero, here is everybody and every system that had access to that data to securely dispose of it at the end of that commission would have been very nice.
Yes.
And to integrate with Dynatrace, that shouldn't be a problem as well, because what we are doing is we can absorb anything that sends telemetry, open telemetry or open metrics. We can absorb that, and then, the world's your oyster, so to say.
Okay. That's yeah. Again, this is quite cool, by the way. So, congratulations.
So it comes back to our strategy, right? Everybody can put a shingle out their front door that says "I sell Tenable.ad," which will just throw up a whole bunch of alerts. We're taking the Ansible and the power of that tool set, right? Co-creating and delivering a better solution to the client. But by the way, Tenable know they've got a better solution as well, right? So it's a win-win going around. So here's the next steps that I see, right? So, Red Hat team may know some of these, right? But we'll identify at some of the clients and open up this discussion that says we can obviously roll playbooks in there. I'm briefing the client executives inside Advent 1 next week. And in 2 weeks' time, I'm briefing the Tenable team across Australia, right? And really it's just to get, if we identify one and we can get a conversation going with the customer, connecting each other and just working the opportunity, right?
Frank's got a question. Yeah. Frank, you raised your hand.
Sure. Yeah, just got a quick question, just with regards to privileged identity mesh. I thought like PIM is a capability that's available out of the box on Azure AD if you have a P2 license. As far as I know, that's available. I'm just trying to understand.
What you got to understand is that only does Azure. It actually doesn't link back on-prem at all. So a P2 license gives you the ability to do PIM, PAM, and JIT in Azure. What it doesn't do, it doesn't give you any granular controls back on-prem.
Got it. Okay, so you're extending those capability on-prem. Okay, makes sense.
Exactly right.
Cheers.
We live in a hybrid world, everybody. All right. Any other questions or comments, guys? So thank you for that, Jen. Do you want to have a closing comment?
Just one last quick question. Is there any other use cases that you're looking at the moment, or is it these are the two main use cases that you identified? Just curious to understand if there's anything in the pipeline.
All right. So what we've done as a strategy is that when people like Ryan get some spare bandwidth, and that's a challenge, right? We ask him to write these playbooks for us. We want it to get 2 so that we can go to a customer and demonstrate that this is possible and it will help your SecOps teams and your infrastructure teams manage your security exposure. If they want other playbooks that they think, hey, can you do this or can you do that? We'd be happy to set up a paid engagement, right? And that will accelerate that process, right? We've written 2 playbooks for Orca, and we'll talk about that one next month.
Okay, well, I think we're at time. If you have any questions or you'd like to talk about an account, please reach out to myself and Wayne, and we're very happy to facilitate that as soon as possible.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.